Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the studio this evening. Nice to see everybody. We're going to do some more pyrography. It's warm enough in here as it is, so I could almost feel like I could just touch this board and it'll turn brown, but not quite. Right. Doing some more work on this elephant. A little bit more work on the elephant. Then we'll see about the giraffe. Then we'll see about the background. Sounds like a plan. Mind you, if that sounds like a plan, I hate to see to find out what a plan actually sounds like. Anyway, enough of the daftness. Let's turn on the pyro tool and heat them up. To borrow the phrase from a film. I'm going to lose this area down here. I know what it is, but it doesn't add much. And yes, I need to darken that a little bit as well. So now this has got to fade from this rich colour to this not so rich colour. What this is meant to be is the skin that comes off the trunk and then sort of comes up and opens out to come around the tusk, and that's what this is. It's lit, but it doesn't really say what it is. You know, it just kind of looks a little bit odd. So I'm going to dispose of it, fill it in, and it probably won't be missed. I don't think it will sort of show as though there's something should have been there that isn't, or anything like that. So, Graya, good evening, sir. Oh, sorry about that. You weren't, well, I was going to say I don't know when you actually went, but I don't think it was too far before the end that I last saw you were around, so I'm not sure you particularly missed anything. Ended up doing what happens sometimes, sort of spending 20 minutes just talking without doing anything, but you may have missed me talking about nothing really at all. I actually this afternoon, whilst I was working, I actually was watching I only watched 2 YouTube videos of a pyrographic artist, Jean Buick. I actually came across one of hers that, well, at first it said slow time and I thought that meant real time, but apparently slow time on that video meant either 2 or 4 times real speed, but it was a bit more interesting. Because it's like, you know, it was working more at real time, and you just saw how fast but how slow, or how slow but how fast she actually works. And I was kind of surprised. It didn't seem to be much faster than me. She's a lot better, of course, but I didn't seem to be that slow. She's a bit more, well, she's a lot more confident about doing things in one go that I'm taking 2 or 3 strokes to do, but yeah, that's just practice. So how has it been today for you, Graya? It's been a bit of a mixed day for me. Doing work, looking at plans, designing wiring systems. Cat 6 wiring, amazing stuff. But trying to work out how much Cat 6 wiring you need in a house and studio. Now that's tough. And some of the nice things that you might want to do with it, you can't. Like, you can't push a satellite aerial signal down it. Should be nice, but you can't. But you can put a telephone down it. You put a HDMI connector down it. It's kind of weird. Anyway. Yeah, actually, well, it was watching some of Jean's videos that made me try the flat shaders, because that's what she uses. Actually, she uses one more like, well, actually probably more like that. So I might, I will be trying that out later. I've done a little bit with that. It is hard to control because of the width, but it's practice, and so that's why I've got two of them. The smaller one is more like the spoon shader, so I was more used to that sort of shape than this, but I will be trying that a bit later on. That LED is doing it again. Well, thank you very much for the actual or even implied or even actual compliment there, Gray. Thank you very much. And that LED has gone out completely now. Oh no, they just flashed. I am going to have to see if I can find... maybe it's sending Morse code at me. If it is, it's got really long word breaks. E. Oh no, that must have been T. TN. I have no idea what that was supposed to be. I don't know. Actually, I'm almost wondering whether those screws that I'm looking at are actually rivets. Anyway, I'm not going to start looking at that on stream. Tonight I'm doing some pyrography. The electronics can wait. Yeah, well, as I mentioned, there's an output LED as well, which has to have power in order to be lit. So, we seem, tool does still seem to be hot. So I wasn't sure about it the other day. It was really difficult to tell, but at one point when it was off, I was doing, if you remember, I was doing that sort of just on that waste bit of wood, just sort of patting the tool down. It was still applying colour to the wood even with that LED out. So we've got a little bit of a, there we go, it's gone. So I've got a bit more just of a bit of around there. Okay. So where, no. Yeah, that's there. All right. And it's gone. That's good. Right. Well, it's an intermittent LED if it is. It's got to be some... I can't kind of work out what it is. I don't think this is a switch mode power supply, so it's going to be a straight... There is a sort of a current regulator on the output. Possibly a voltage regulator. I'm not sure if it's going to be voltage or current. So I'm not quite sure what's driving that LED. Unless it's got something to do with the feedback circuit. I don't know. I literally don't know how the circuit's constructed, so I'd probably have to take the thing apart to take a look at how the circuit's constructed to know what the LED is actually doing, and therefore whether it's got any impact on things like the heat. Maybe take a look at it this weekend if I can get it apart. As I pull, maybe have to get a small. I'm not sure whether it's a star driver or whether it's actually just just a rivet or something like that, or maybe a one-way screw. Don't know if these sides pop off or. I think they must be screwed in. Maybe I'll try just a flat screwdriver. I can always, it's out of its warranty, so I can always cut slots in the top of the screws and then just use a flat screwdriver on them. Yeah, it's around this, right? Yeah, around there. Okay. It could be just something quite literally as well, I was about to say just a rough connection or a dry joint or something like that, but I can't quite work out why it keeps going on and off then, if that's the case. We'll sort it at some point. Worst case is it fails, I have to buy another one if I can afford it. So we might be not doing pyrography for a while if it fails. I suppose that's the nice thing about the fact that I do quite a few crafts, because I can always do some of the others for quite a while. Carving generally takes a while, and there's scraper board and the punch craft and scraper board, punch craft, carving, the jewellery, and I could always try the fuse beads, the perler bead things that I've got. If I can think of something to do it on. That's not to do it. Yeah, what subject to do it with. That's back to my old. It's got to be my old. It's got to be worthy of being done on whatever it is. I'm a bit daft like that. Don't want to waste materials on stuff that's not worthy. But of course, you need the practice, and until you practice, you can't do things that are worthy in quotes. So it's a bit self-defeating. I'll get over it. Let's just give this tool a little bit of a wipe down. There we go. It's got hair on it. Whew. Thank you very much, Gray. That's good. I think I probably need to do a little bit more work just in this sort of the lower half of the trunk. I mean, I love this now up here. I think it looks really good. I think there needs to be a little bit more here. It's still a bit sort of flattish, and this is getting on quite well. No, yeah. I was about to say I'm not sure about the head. And just down here a little bit, but what I'm kind of thinking about is, well, I think I do need to darken this trunk area down here a little bit just to reveal the trunk more, because I need to put some shading into the trunk. Sorry, the tusk, to apply some shaping to that as well. And if I just try and apply a little bit of shading, it will just disappear into this. And it is quite a high contrast difference, so a little bit of work's there. But then I kind of want to outline or do something with this giraffe, such that I can then sort of apply a background of some kind. And then we can see whether sort of the colour of the forehead or anything like that is right, or I need to change that around. Leza, good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening. Thank you for dropping in. Yeah. I'm partly I'm looking at this on stream. I don't mind this. You sort of see this area has been quite light, and I don't really mind that too much, because of course that's the direction of the sunlight. But that kind of implies that these ought to be a little bit darker. And well, sort of this area. I mean, we've got a shadow coming up here, as you can see anyway, so it sort of implies that it should be darker, which would give it more of a rounded feel as well. But we'll get there. I think, as I say, I want to just make around this tusk darker, even if I don't darken the whole area. I want to be able to colour shade inside it, and I can't. I don't have a lot of room colour wise or shade wise to do that. Kind of need to turn it upside down. It's always easy to work curves from the inside, just because your arm kind of naturally follows round that way if you sort of pivot on your elbow. It sort of makes it a bit easier to do in terms of keeping nice smooth straight lines, for example. Well, smooth straight curved lines, if that isn't an oxymoron. So. I don't have any objections to answering. I'm just trying to recall. wonder if I still got the invoice. I'm kind of wanting to say about 150, 180 pounds just for the system plus the pens. But the problem is remembering. Let's do a search. No, that's definitely not the one I was after. It's older than that. It's definitely older than that. I'm just looking back through my old mail because I do keep things like order things. Not that I actually intend to keep orders, but it just never get around to tidying things up in my email. It's older than that. And I know it's older than Farming Simulator. It would help if I could actually remember the company I bought it from, but I can't. I shall be with you shortly. I might even give this up at the moment, but I keep wanting to say about £180 just for the there we go. I actually, just as I was about to give up, I've just found it. The box itself with I got it was kind of a kit with two pens, two heavy duty pens. So I think it was probably, like say, this pen, which is a spoon shader, and this one without the tip, so just the screw fixings, if you like. Those two together were 225 UK pounds, and that was back in 2012, early 2012. And then the writing pen, that's this one, was £27. This, which is a knife, that was £27. Okay, so heavy duty pens like this are £27. Any pens are £27. Yeah. That means I've got another pen somewhere. That's interesting. I've lost a pen. Of course, according to this, I've got two. That's a tip only. Okay. 2, 3, 4, 5 pens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pens. Okay. So £27.50 for a pen. That's this, or the writing one here, or these, this without the tip, on my knife. So they were £27.50. Then just a tip on its own, like this. I don't know where it is, but I've got a few of these. The tip itself was £4.75. Okay, there's that. So £150 would be about $300 Canadian. Okay, so all in told, I probably spent about 600 Canadian then. Yeah, I kind of had to save up for it, and it's kind of like I looked at these with, it was the same one with one pen rather than two, and it was a little bit cheaper, not a great deal, I think like 20-ish pounds, 25 pounds, say. So I guess that's probably going to be in the order of about 40 Canadian. But I kind of felt like it was a good idea to have the two pens connected all the time. I'm trying to think, what did I pay for my two knives? Because I don't have chip knives, but I've got two similar sort of two carving knives. They were about, yeah, they'd have been about sort of 50-60 pounds. In fact, no, I was wondering if I still had the labels on. So probably about the same price you paid for your knives. And then, yeah, you've obviously everything else like wood and stuff like that. Yeah. Mind you, it's I'm guessing you have the same problem that I do with pens, or even with the chisels. Possibly, I'm not doing enough carving with knives, but I suspect I get the same way with that, and that is, you kind of like, I want another one. I want something that does something. Yeah, that's why I've got the flat shade. That's why I've got this wide shader. They bought us tips to try, and then if I didn't like them, it wasn't so much of a spend. But I kind of want this one certainly as a fixed tip pen when I can get around to getting it, because you don't lose as much heat. Even though these are really tight screw connections, you do lose. There's some resistance there, therefore you do lose a little bit of heat just in that area, which it's not a great deal. It's not a problem. But if they're not quite tight enough and I lay this down, this goes ping. Ali Seppi, I hope that's pronounced correctly. Thank you very much for following the studio. I do appreciate you doing so, and thank you very much for that. Yeah, let me just put that away. But yeah, with the chisels, it's very soon afterwards. That's why I got the 1 inch wide one, and then I got the skew chisel because I just needed a little bit more. There are cheaper machines, I believe, than that as well. Although if you're in Canada and that's a Canadian machine, maybe not. So. Certainly, I think in America there's probably some different manufacturers. I just like this one because of the way I say I like this one because of the way the pens connect. I actually don't like the sockets and the plugs. To me, that's an audio connector, not a power connector. And it does. I suppose it does a reasonable job. It gets warm. And I keep right inside. I keep having to adjust the contact that's just inside there, that this centre pin connects to, which requires me to use like a scalpel blade, something really sort of thin, to get in there. But apart from that, I kind of love this. I don't get hot or anything with you might think they around here will get hot, and generally speaking, it doesn't. If I work like that, then yes, because the heat's coming straight up. But otherwise, I find these really nice to use. Of course, anybody else might go, oh, that's horrible, I don't like it. Each to their own, so to speak. And the problem is, I guess most people have the same problem, unless there's a local sort of craft supplier that actually has in the thing that you want. There's no way really you can go and just sort of pick one of these up and go, hey, do I like the feel of that tool? Because I mean, after all, with something like this, you're using it for hours at a time, and once you've got it, you really don't. Well, I suppose in some countries you've got distance selling, which means that if you buy something off the internet, you can send it back. But it's still a bit of a faff and things like that, and it would really be nice if they were more widely around. But I certainly couldn't find one within a reasonable distance to me to actually go and put my hands on one. They were all sort of the opposite end of the country, and I really didn't feel like driving sort of 300 miles to find out. Yeah, it's exactly like it's not RCA connectors they're called, which probably stands for something, but I don't know. Yeah, there's nothing special about them. They're not, there's not a heavy duty version or anything like that. It's just a standard audio connector. But then again, I mean, there's a fair bit of metal in it, so I believe they are rated to several amps of current. Because if you think, you think of I was going to say the output from a power amplifier, 100 watt, 50 watt power amplifier, to a speaker, for example, which ideally you don't use these sorts of connections for, but they do get used that way. And there's a fair bit of power in that, a fair bit of current, so they are sort of designed to handle it. It just, to me, audio is very low power stuff, not tens of amps. Right, so we have. I'm going to shade this tusk. I'm going to now hope it doesn't go horribly wrong. Let me turn that down a little bit just in case. So we've got a shade around here. And I've got a little bit of some sunlight across the top there. And sort of down here. Sort of roughly down that sort of area there. So all of this gets coloured in darker because it's sort of in shadow, even though it's sort of the white of the tusk. So when it's white, not white, when it's not white. Fun fact, in most manufacturers' paint ranges there are more shades of black than any other colour. Closely followed by the number of shades of white. And then you get weird, well, I say weird, unusual terminology. If you add black to a colour, you're shading it. If you add white to a colour, you're tinting it. Sometimes you see, even my channel is educational. So we've got sort of a shadow around there. I'm going to add some sort of dirt, if you like, to this tusk. Which is where I'm assuming it's a he, the elephant has sort of rubbed the tusk against tree bark and things like that. And again, I don't really bother about a uniform colouring, because of course it's rubbed against trees and all sorts of stuff, so you know, the colouring will be in sort of bands and striations and all sorts of bits and pieces. So again, if you know, it's one of the nice things, I guess, of doing animals and stuff like that. You don't have that consistent colouring everywhere, and things like this where it's been rubbing against a tree. Well, you know, I don't think the elephant was that bothered about making sure his tusk was just that right shade of greeny brown, evenly spread across it. Could you just imagine an elephant sort of going up to the water and going, look at his reflection and going, you know what, I could do with a bit more just there on that tusk, and going away to a tree and see, totally potty. Now, as you can see there, you start to lose the contrast between the two. It's not bad at the moment, because your eye still follows the line around, but I kind of just need to darken this area a little bit to keep the distinguishing marks between them. So we will apply a little bit more colour. And I'm going to do it with sort of a sharp edge. So what I'm doing here is I'm tilting the tool up, so I'm now just working with more or less the point, which what would be called the toe of the tool. I'm really just trying to establish a really sort of sharp edge. I don't want to cut into the wood, but I do sort of want a really clear edge. Not fuzzy or anything like that, because of course it's a very solid object, is the tusk. There are sometimes when you can get away with outlining where you couldn't otherwise, and something like that you kind of don't really know. I mean, if you look at the stream now, that has just enhanced that edge enough that it kind of really looks sort of separate, and I've got to do that on the other side, because otherwise this shading sort of joins it together. And in fact we'll do that now just to see. Don't want to go really silly dark, you know, just it really is just about creating, well, it's a bit like when you do the chip carving, that outside edge is the important one to be really nice and crisp. Now, because I'm tilting this up, the heat's getting to this finger a little bit. I'm going to go around the top of this tusk as well. Just like that. Now let's have a look, as that should have. It's just yeah, maybe a little bit darker down here, but it's just separated it away now. So although you see sort of the same shading going across that boundary, you can actually see the separation, and so it makes it look as though it's in front slightly because of the whiteness. Do need to make this a bit darker at the background just to throw it a bit further forward, but we're almost there with that. Might apply a little bit more darkness just in this area around here of the tusk, just to try and indicate a little bit more of, in fact I've missed the curve a little bit, a little bit more of the roundedness of it. As you can see, it's a good job I'm not after really smooth lines because I'm not achieving it. I do have a tendency to actually be able to use this tool a lot better if I tip it slightly rather than using it flat. So I am kind of using the edge. Okay, now that sort of darkness seems to be about what I perhaps need around here. I will fade it as we go across, I think, but that kind of looks more along the lines of what I'm after. So I'm just going to sort of do something similar on this side here. A little bit of hiding the outline, or just joining to it so it looks like part of it. As I say, when you're looking at it, your eye really doesn't almost see that the outline, which is one of the weird things. Give me a minute, guys. Sorry about that, just my wife has come across something that's broken. that she really didn't want to be broken, so it's going to go into the ornament hospital, i.e. my desk, to be glued at some point in the future when I can manage to do so. There are times when I'm doing this where I really do feel like, well, I suppose I am, but I do really feel like I'm actually painting with heat. You know, I'm just doing this sort of movement, and I can see the colour change is just underneath where the pen is, and it really does feel like I'm painting that change rather than causing it. It's an interesting sort of perception for me, is that. Now that. Okay, I'm not gonna go across there. I don't think so. Let's just do that. Let me darken this a little bit just around there. That's a little bit sharp. There. Because there's kind of a dip there as it comes up and around, so I'm going to leave that for the moment. Don't actually mind that either. It kind of resembles a shadow. Thank you. It kind of resembles a shadow coming off of there. I'll come back to that sort of area, I think. As you'll gather by now, I quite often leave things. I'll come back and either when I've done something else and I take a fresh look at it, or just because it's kind of like, yeah, I need to darken this area to see what that one looks like, and what have you. And what was I doing? This is kind of well, when you're doing this, you kind of need to know where the end of the nib is. It's not always exactly where you think it is, which is sometimes why I get marks that I wasn't intending or expecting to get, just because what I thought was the tip actually isn't, and I'm touching a different part of it. But it is kind of one of the things you need to get used to with doing this, is where the tip touchdown point is. Kind of a bit like it is when you're doing airbrushing, because you need to know where the thing's going to hit before you actually hit it. You know, where the paint's going to go before you actually pull the trigger. Otherwise you get things in a really odd position. That actually looks like that. Okay. Right, I'm going to darken this down a little bit. Ah, random noises from your computer that you wonder what they are. Okay. And despite the fact I don't think I've done anything in that area, it currently now looks darker than it did before, because I've darkened this bit around here. You might think that's weird, but that's what's just happened. Right. I know I want to do something about the shadows down there. And they kind of don't make sense without being able to see the other ear. Actually, it's the tusk. Ah, now I understand. This here is the shadow of the tusk. Because the light's coming this way, and that's kind of the curve of the tusk. That makes sense now. Alright. You learn something every day. So, I now want to look for one of my other reference pictures. If I can do so without completely destroying my desk. Hey, giraffe, a giraffe. Which is what we have here. Now we're quite lucky because of course a giraffe is basically a light brown with dark brown patches. So I can more or less just colour the whole thing in. I am looking at my reference, and around the legs a little bit, so just on the underbelly if you like, it's a very light pale colour. So not sure what the exact right shade should be, but we're going to find out. Actually, I was about to say it kind of doesn't matter. It does matter, but it's in the distance-ish, and it's dusk, and we've got all sorts of colour variations going on because of that. So we'll turn that tool down, because I was getting too dark a mark for what I wanted there. So this may just turn out to be a little bit more of an impressionistic giraffe. I've got some sort of, oh, it's in here, that's right, an ear sort of out the back there like that. This other one's down here but it's lighter, so we would be doing that by darkening stuff around it. I'm actually wondering whether to switch to the writing tip. Might do that in a minute once I let me do some shading, which this definitely is a little bit better for me anyway. So we can come all the way down the legs there. I mentioned it before, but this is one of the nice things about the tool. I've turned the temperature down on this tool, so I can work slower. Gives me more time to move and to just decide the colours that I actually want this thing to get to whilst I'm doing this. That leg's a bit... It's bad to say that leg's a bit short, I'm not actually sure it is. Quite chunky legs on a giraffe apparently. Guessing that looks a bit odd at the moment. Giraffe time. Yeah, looks a bit odd. Hopefully that changes as we apply more colouring. I'm not really bothered about too much detail on this, to be honest, because this is the bit that wants to be detailed. This is kind of a filler. It just fills up the space a little bit and sets a scene. Maybe with one or two of the blacker trees, black sort of trees in the background, what we'll get here then is something that is savanna-ish. I'm just applying an overall sort of colour. The bit between the the patches on a giraffe, the dark patches, you get a sort of light outline. So I'm applying that light outline really there to that. That edge there doesn't look quite right. Must be nice and smooth. And a nice curve around there. And that's going to curve round nicely straight down into that leg. And then it curves all the way down till it disappears into the grass around there. You try and sort of capture the curves as you get them, because the nice smooth curves are what draw your eye around a picture. A sort of how this might be described, for example, is sliding down the giraffe's back, and your eye then points straight at the elephant. So the elephant in the room. Right, I'm going to try switching pins to the writing tip. For the minute, I'll turn that down a bit. Still too hot. This pen won't actually go that much cooler. So we now start to add some sort of shading in there. There's a... oh, cats are always snoozing somewhere around. It's not so bad when you're studying and it's laid next to you. It's when you've got to get up and the cat's snoozing next to you on the bed and stays snoozing when you get up. That's when it's really quite bad. I'm going to need to try and really turn this pen down a great deal. Just some of these areas around here, like the saddle area, the browns are quite deep. Because, well, I'm assuming that the this sort of pattern is almost, completely random. So I'm just, dithering around. I'm not particularly trying to get any sort of actual copy or pattern or something like that. Yours is a house where the cats come first. No, the cat's house is a place where you come second, Laser. Okay, so they sleep on top of you. Oh, okay. Our current cats don't. We have had some in the past that do. Actually, Felix always likes to. So Junior likes to lay against my legs, although he does get off in the night. And Felix will sort of lay on top of your legs and gradually sinks between them, which makes it sort of impossible to turn over, and then gets really uncomfortable. But luckily he doesn't do it that often. So I'll turn this down as far as it will go. Which is by no means enough, I know that, with this pen. This is turned down as far as this pen will possibly go now, and yet it's still I could still easily make dirty great brown marks on here quite easily. Yeah, they do that, don't they? They won't move at all. You can turn around, you can turn over in bed with a cat on it, and it will not move. And then there'll be other times where you just blink an eye and the cat leaps up and runs away. Oh dear, really odd things. But fascinating things. Kind of couldn't do without them these days. Not sure the resemblance is all that good, but I don't promise to be able to draw a giraffe. I've drawn an elephant. I don't promise to be able to draw a giraffe. By which I mean it's not great, but it's not bad. It's going to be interesting to try and do the mane that goes down the back, but we shall see about that shortly. Really hard to do random patterns. You kind of sort of start trying to make them regular to fit in with each other, and in some ways it's kind of amazing how nature does it. And with this, you know, with a giraffe, you've got sort of like bits of colour with lighter areas around it, and it's how did it know to stop there and do a light bit all the way around? Why isn't it sort of... I suppose by definition, if you had two bits that came together, it'd be a bigger bit with a light bit around it, so maybe I'm talking a load of rubbish. Well, it's starting to resemble a giraffe. I'll take a look at that a little bit later, rather than run that whilst I'm on stream, but thank you. Yeah, see if I can get this mane on here. Can't exactly get the details of a mane, but we get something that just sort of perhaps resembles it a little bit. Like that. Like that. Oh dear. I wonder if I've airbrushed an elephant before, so I wonder if that's made a difference to me doing that, because this looks a bit, yeah, it looks a bit. Sorry, I'm concentrating on what I'm doing rather than saying much at the moment. Probably want to apply a little bit more colour to this, but it's yeah, we get there, sort of thing. Yeah, then that's got a shadow edge line just there. Yeah, so I'm going to make sure that this leg looks like it's going over the top of that one. And I'm doing this quite lightly and fast, just so that we get quite light marks, not something particularly dark. And as we get down here, I'm just sort of scribbling, hinting at something being there without actually showing what it is. Now this is very much sort of like using a really hard pencil almost. And I guess if I turn the heat up, it'd be, you know, it's like using a softer pencil, but that doesn't look too bad. Doesn't look too great, but it doesn't look too bad. Now then, I said my horizon line was about there, so I am just thinking about putting in something there that just sort of resembles tree-ish like things. like that. Sorry, Graya. Yeah, I mean that's half of it. I mean that tells you it's a giraffe. The head is a bit, and I think I probably want to apply a little bit of sort of shading in certain areas. This is, you know, you can sort of see a darkness, but the under fur hair, whatever it is darker around here as well. So at the moment it's kind of quite a uniform body, but we apply a little bit more sort of colour to it. You know what, I quite like that tree. Not altogether sure. I wonder if I should actually try and just put in. So we've got a sort of horizon there now. It's got a bit of a curve on it, but that's and I'm just wondering whether or not to put another. No, I know what I'm going to do. Let's do a. Just something like that. Right, switch pens again. Back to that one. Now we turn this up a little bit. And we just apply a little bit of heat to this darker area here, so we create a darker back fur, which is actually shadow. So we can show a little bit then of the form of the giraffe. because of that shadow effect. I come down around there just a little bit to just around that foreleg. Just up to the back, towards the back end here, but not quite as far as the leg. It just sort of curves over the top of the leg, because of course this muscle is stood out relative to the side, so whilst this is in shade, that's popping out into the light a little bit. And then we've got some just duskiness around this area of the neck, almost as though, you know, it's almost as though it's been rubbing on something brown, which it may well have done, I suppose. But the rest of the animal has got this sort of dustiness about it. I wish I knew if I'd actually done an African elephant. It would be rather silly if I've done sort of an African-ish scene and it's an Indian elephant. Mind you, as artist in residence, it's amazing what these safari parks will import, isn't it, to satisfy guests. Changing the story to meet the picture I've actually got. Yeah, the back end around here, of course, is in shadow. It's quite dark. WWCCBB88. That's about the only way I can pronounce that. Good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening. What's up? The sky, the sun is still up. I'm still up. Ceiling's up. Dear, good evening. Welcome to you. My stupid sense of humour. It's starting to get towards being late-ish for me. 9:30 in the UK, and I tend to react a little bit silly sometimes to some phraseology. But I'm doing well, thank you. We're doing some pyrography. I was about to say of an elephant, but it don't look like an elephant. That's the elephant which we were doing a little bit earlier, and we'll do some more of. But just adding in a giraffe here to fill out the scene a little bit and set the scene for this being a sort of African theme. Aye. Lad, blimey. It's 50 odd years ago since somebody called me a lad. Well, 40 odd years ago. So I guess thank you for the compliment. Either or this webcam is worse than I thought it was. I'm just trying to get just down, yeah, right down the edge. In fact, I'm going to flip this over. Right on the back edge here of the leg is dark. 84 Guy, good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening. Farmville Guy also, welcome to the studio this evening. I'm guessing Farmville Guy, you enjoy playing the game of a similar name. We're both guys, so good evening. Yep, that's true. I'm guessing Farmville is your most favourite game. Isn't that Farmville? Isn't that Facebook game? Or is that a real game? Is that a standalone game? I'm trying to remember now. So Andre is using the real toe of this tool. I'm using it upside down, and it will actually give me an extremely fine line. And I want it to be quite a dark line as well. But not quite a dark line, but not too dark a line. It's one of those funny things that I want it to be just so. We are sort of coming up to a dusk area. Dusk. It is coming up to dusk on this. Don Waldron, yeah, Facebook. What is that drawing stick? It's okay, pyrography. Pyrography, a literal translation, because it's sort of Greek and oldish sort of words. Pyro meaning fire, graphy referring to writing, so fire writing. Although, as you can see, there's no fire and I'm not actually writing. The kind of translation I prefer is painting with heat. So what this is this is wood. It's actually a birch plywood, birch being quite a light wood, which is got certain characteristics about it as well, but principally it's quite a light wood. Paper is actually acceptable as an alternative, although thicker paper the better, or almost card. And what this is an electrically heated tool. So low voltage, but it's electrically heated, and which heats up the tip here. There are more than one tool I've got around here. This is just one of them, each designed to do a slightly different job. And as Grier has alluded to there, it's not exactly burning the wood fibres. What's kind of happening is when you put this down on the wood fibres, I wouldn't exactly say whether they rupture but effectively they draw out some of the resin or the sap which is within the fibres, and even though the wood's been dried, it's not 100% dry. So it draws out a little bit of that sap or the resin and effectively cooks it fairly quickly. And in cooking it, the liquid turns brown, and it then sort of gets really sort of sticky and sits on the surface rather like a varnish. So it's like putting a brown varnish over the top, and that's effectively what pyrography is. If you hold heat on enough, you will actually burn, carbonize more exactly, because burning is fire. This is a bit like how, if you left it on long enough and carbonized it, that's kind of like how charcoal's made. It uses heat to drive all the water out of it, so that you're basically left with a carbon lump, which is what charcoal is. So if you hold it down long enough, you will get that sort of thing. Depending on how long I hold it down, and in what places, you get the different shades of colour. So we're not exactly burning. It's although people do burn literally. You wouldn't be doing it on a piece of wood this size, but a larger one, people do use blowtorches and acetylene torches to create images. And there are techniques where you use like a branding stamp, which does carbonize the wood, and then there are other tools which sort of fit in between this and the branding stamps and things like that. So hopefully that's giving you a good idea. Do you use other woods? You can use other woods. The darker, and I'll show you some examples, but the darker the wood, the less shades you get. So generally speaking, you want a lighter wood, and you want a wood. Well, you often want a wood where you don't get very prominent ring marks. You can see them on here, but they're not standing out of you. If you look at something like pine, you get really prominent ring marks, and unless your artwork takes those into account, like an abstract piece for example, then if you're doing this sort of artwork, it can be hard to incorporate them into the picture in such a way that it looks natural. But so birch, poplar is another one. It's slightly whiter, which is quite good to use. But you can even use things like mahogany, or ivory, which is really dark wood. You kind of only have sort of black or nothing when you get down to that sort of level. But it kind of just is possible. You just about on some of the really dark ivories, you can just about get sort of it's there or it's not. So that's the main thing. Birch as well, even when it's dry, does hold a reasonable amount of liquid, so it colours reasonably easily as well. Some woods will colour easier than others. Pine, for example, does colour really easily, but the rings don't. For birch, they're sort of equal. So, that swings and roundabouts. I shall show you some other pieces. Yes, I'm quite happy to do that. Okay. Just as a matter of interest, I was just saying another wood. This is ash. Just a rough bit of wood. This one is, well, I'll show you. It's, I was colouring quite easily on birch, but this one I have to really slow down to get a colour on birch. Sorry, on ash. It really takes a bit of effort, shall we say, or time, to get any sort of colour. You might just be able to see that colour starting to come there. If I'd done this on the birch plywood, I would probably have carbonised it by now. At that sort of time. So I mean, even if I hold that down, it's not even done that. I had to turn the tool up quite a bit to get that. So as you can see, different woods react in different ways. I definitely would have carbonised the birch underneath at this holding it down this long. There, and you see it's still not quite as dark. So that's just an example of writing I was doing on the stream the other night. Let me just put this tool to one side. I don't want to burn myself on that. In actual fact, I'll temporarily just turn that off. So, other pieces. Putty tats. Yes, I can turn the heat up. It's about, that's not, you know, on the ash I can turn the heat up. I wouldn't turn it up on the birch, it would be too hot. But it's so it's you just get to learn where you want it on the wood and just quite how much heat you want to apply. I tend to like to apply it slowly because that way I get more control. But that's yeah, it's just different. So that's a putty cat. It's called Junior. Also on a birch plywood, and is his sort of brother in house. These two cats live with each other in the same house. This one's called Felix. So we've got Felix there. What else? I've got a couple of other things around here. So a couple of practice pieces. So this is a practice piece. We have cats, so I don't have dogs are fine. We just happen to have cats, so they make quite good models at times. But no, I have no particular preference as such. I've had a dog in the past, a long time ago. So this was a practice piece, an Avro Lancaster. Yep. Probably given away by the clue of the writing at the bottom. This is just on hardboard. It's called, but as you can see, it's a lot darker, and so it's I've got less shades available to me. As you can see, it's if you kind of compare the colours of this with on the elephant, you know, almost, well, not quite the darkest areas, but sort of the mid-tones are the lightest areas I can get on here. You know, like the wingtip here. You know, we're quite dark, and that's a similar sort of shade. So you know, this is an illustration of hardboard, but hardboard is generally quite easy. Well, in the UK, it's quite easy to get hold of relatively cheaply, so it makes a good practice wood from that perspective. So that's that one. Okay, Phil. Laser. Your favourite aeroplane? Oh, okay. I don't mind the World War II stuff. I probably want to try and do which is why I was practicing that at some point. Maybe do some of the World War II series. So the usual Spitfire, Hurricane, maybe the Wellington, the Lancaster, and then maybe go back to something like the Halifax and things like that. This another practice piece which I'm not finished with, but is a British locomotive, class 66. So I understand. I can tell that because of the serial number on the side, 66001. The 66 is class 66. So, you know, just a practice. And again, I've not. This one's not finished, but you know, there are some nice looking locomotives, and some of the famous ones, the Flying Scotsman, the Mallard, and that sort of thing, which might make a nice sort of series. So again, just practicing it. You like trains? I don't mind them as well. Trains, planes. Graya, have a good evening. You'll have to eat your tea really fast, or you're doing it really fast. I've got about 10 minutes left, so yeah, some of the more famous, well, as I say, famous locomotives, but I mean, some of these actually, whilst people don't know about things, now I've gone on completely, like the Deltics, for example. If you're familiar with the Deltic diesels, they're kind of an iconic, for people who know about them, they're kind of an iconic engine. So it kind of struck me it'd be nice to do a series on those sort of things. So just pick out some nice looking engines, like the 125s or the Class 91s. The Virgin, the Voyager, or is it Atlantic? I can't remember now. I don't actually remember half of these. I just look at it and go, hey, that looks nice. That'd make a nice picture. So, P23 is as a train. Don't know the train, to be honest. I don't. If we talk about trains, I don't fantastically have a favourite as such. I have ones that I like the look of, but quite often they sometimes grow on you. I tend to like the streamlined look, although of course that one isn't streamlined, but there's just something about it that makes it look like a powerful engine. And the Deltic caught my eye because it kind of looks like a really powerful engine. Whether it is or not, I have absolutely no idea, but it's I occasionally play Train Simulator, so you get some nice pictures out of that. But planes, my favourite plane is Concorde, and I haven't actually done any pyrography of Concorde. That might be an interesting one for the future. I've done it in various other media, but not pyrography as yet. So I don't have any more. No, I don't have any more pyrographic pieces around. I've done a couple of portraits in it as well, but they're elsewhere in the house. Actually, I don't actually know where they are at the moment, so I couldn't actually pull those out. But Spitfire Mark 9. That's not quite the latest ones, is it? Is it the Mark 9? They went to a 4-bladed prop, I think, somewhere around there. I don't remember. And of course the was it? I mean the Supermarine Spitfire, but I'm just trying to remember the racing plane that the Spitfire came out of. Might have been just the Supermarine. I can't remember its predecessor. I'm going to do a little bit more work on this giraffe. I want to darken his tail. Actually, I don't want to darken his tail down. I do want to just apply some more shade around here. I'm doing this kind of relatively slowly because it's very easy to just create dark blobs, and I'm trying to do this with in a sort of a very graduated manner, so I don't really want to create really dark blobs. Now, in doing some of this, what's happened is I mentioned the effect is like cooking sap and then it's laid on the surface. You can actually reheat that sap, and these darker the spots, which is the spots on the giraffe, as I've just been going over the top of there, I've been spreading them out and they've faded slightly, which if I was if I was burning the wood fibres, you wouldn't actually be able to do. You wouldn't actually be able to sort of smooth that out. So just it's just an illustration of how it's something on the surface rather than actually burning the wood itself. Now the back here of the giraffe is also quite dark. It's in shadow, from more or less from the shape of the giraffe itself, actually, which also implies that the neck would be as well. But we've got sort of a rough a mane down the back, and I need to extend that a little bit because I haven't done it quite far enough down. So what I've just resorted to doing now is patting this so that I don't actually spread don't actually spread out the colour. I want it to stay in one place, so I'm having to sort of just pat down, which is a technique I don't use very often because it's actually quite hard to control the colour that you get, because it can very quickly go from no colour to quite a bit of colour in sort of one leap. And it's also on the tip of this tool, so what I need to do is just give it a bit of a clean. There we go. So yeah, this is effectively how hot it is. I'm not setting fire or even really charring the paper. So I can, and this is tissue paper or kitchen paper. I can make it go brown, which is why you can use card for pyrography. You can also use bones. It smells a lot, but you can use bones, and you can do it on leather as well, or any sort of animal leather. I think. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch tools again to a writing tip, because that gives me quite a bit of fine control, and turn the tool down as far as it goes in terms of temperature, because this really does heat up rather quickly. So what I want to do now is just apply some little tiny areas of shadow like round, there, for example, just under the leg, and a little bit just around there. Just darken the tummy a little bit, just around there. Oh, you've just taken a promotion, have you, Idifulga? It's okay. And yeah, I need to. This leg is in front of that leg, and I need to make that sort of obvious. And the only way I can make that obvious is to just darken this down around this edge here, so your eye follows it down. Oh yeah, it's okay. I'll show them in a minute. That one, that's fine. The outer ones, thank you. My lovely wife just put my light on for me. It's getting dark here in the UK. So I just darken that edge along there. Your eye can follow it down, and therefore you see that in front of the leg, which is behind. And let's just put a few sort of creases in here sort of stuff you kind of really don't see unless you look closely. Oh, and I need to just extend this down the back a little bit. And then because of the way it works, I just dot around that area there, which then looks like the little dark hairs right at the bottom of the mane. And the same across the top, because for some reason it's just the way the tips of the hair are a little bit darker than the rest. And we I've put trees in there, and I'm going to make this background a little darker. So I'm going to actually have to darken those trees off at some point. They're too light for what I am going to want it to look like around there. But that giraffe is sort of enough done now to allow me now to do background shading, which will be on another stream. And then once because I can do the background sky, and I sort of want that to be sort of a nice lighter than this, but sort of darkish, probably graduating. I might get quite dark right at the horizon line, because it's kind of meant to be a sunset. The sun's really low here, but it's off this right hand side of the picture, and so kind of want this background to be quite rich and sort of, it would be a dark red if you could imagine it as a sunset, and then graduate it up, because otherwise there'll just be too much dark area. I really haven't decided what I'm doing down here, but once I've done that, I can then look at this elephant again and just judge whether the shades that I've done are sufficient. Because somewhere like here, which is the forehead, which you sort of has got quite a lot of light on it, I probably want to be darker, but once I darken the background off a little bit, this will look even lighter. So I don't actually know what shade I want that to be. I've applied a little bit, but until I get sort of more of the background colour, I won't actually know what the final colour will be. I mean, even things like this here, which looks really dark to you probably on stream, and you know, really nice shadow. Once I apply a sort of colour into the background, this will actually appear lighter. Just really depending on the shade, but it really sort of adjusts things. And I'm now looking at that, and that looks a bit dark. That's the camber for you, to be honest. This camber has a tendency to, you know, these are brown, but you're almost certainly seeing them as almost a black colour. And you're feeling sorry for the Mayday-Fall guy, are you, that you need to go back and do it again? Let me change that. Despite, you know, you can see that actually looks really quite dark, that area on the giraffe. It's not as dark as that here in real life, but it is probably a bit darker than I want. So what I'm going to do is just apply a little bit of colour around it, so what will happen here is it won't look as dark, and once I apply a background, that in itself will change quite how it looks. So all colours are relative, or all shades are relative to each other. So what looks too light one moment can look really dark next, and vice versa. For those who haven't watched my stream before, if you're wondering what I'm looking at, because of course on the face cam I'm now looking up at something, I've got a monitor right in front of me which is got my OBS output window on it, and what I'm doing is using it rather like I'd use a graphics tablet, in that I can see this camera gives me sort of a 3-foot, 4-foot view as I stood back. And so what I can do is by looking at the output, it's a bit like I'm standing back and looking at the image without actually standing back, which means I can work on it whilst I'm this close, but see it as though I'm stood back, which is a really quite useful thing. So I'm looking at that and doing like I would do with a graphics tablet, hand-eye coordination, in order to see where the pen is and see just, you know, look at the shades I'm producing and adjusting them to the sort of colours that I want. So I probably need a little bit more heat on this. Yeah. I will actually be stopping the stream very shortly. I normally stream from about 8 PM in the UK until about 10 PM, which is has gone now, so we are quite well, we are close to finishing. Daft as it sounds, this tool isn't particularly hot, but it does generate quite a bit of heat when you're working on the top of it, so I'm getting quite warm. I also want to go have a drink. And it will soon be time for me to go to bed, so I won't be going on for much longer. So whilst I'm just doing this, what I'm going to say is what I would normally start to say around this time, and that is of course to encourage anybody who is watching and who would like to do so to follow me. That way, if you do like what you're looking at and would like to see more, of course, then Twitch will in theory notify you when I go live tomorrow. If you want to do so, you are also welcome to follow me on Twitter. Twitter does seem to be a little bit more reliable in terms of passing out messages, of course, it being its primary role. So you can follow me on Twitter. Details are below the stream window, but are also on the end plate you'll see soon. But simply it's Zaraganart. That's and effectively the only tweet that goes out is when I go live. I don't tweet my lunch or breakfast or anything like that, so it is a somewhat low volume Twitter feed. On the other hand, if you just feel like trying to catch me the next time I do stream, my stream times approximately are 7 nights per week from 2000 hours in the UK time. At the moment that's British summertime, and that equates to 1900 hours GMT. And if you don't happen to know what the translation is into your own local time zone, then you could either ask Google, or you could take a quick look at the clock on your screen. Most display devices do have one. And then if you simply look at that and subtract about 2 hours and 10 minutes, that will or would have been 8 PM in the UK. That would have been the time I started streaming. And that will be the time I start streaming tomorrow and on Thursday and Friday, etc. So you're quite welcome to drop in and when I go live again. Say hello if you wish, or just sit in the background and take a look at what's going on. I don't actually mind. I don't require anybody to chat unless they really want to. Or even if they only partially want to, I would encourage you to chat. As I say, if you want to just sit back, like Adie's doing there, get on with something else and enjoying the stream, then that is perfectly fine with me. And there we go. That's not quite as standing out now as being, you know, a real heavy dark shadow as it was before I went through all of that. May do a little bit more work on it on the next stream, but effectively that will do for what I'm after at the moment. So everybody, thank you very much for watching. It has been excellent, great fun having you around and watching and answering questions and talking about all sorts of things under the sun, from railway engines to oh, I can't remember now. We've had a fair range of topics this evening. Thank you all. Hope to see you again on a future stream. Bye bye.